Just imagine what your fantasy team could look like today if you had stashed high upside names like Kareem Hunt, Tank Bigsby, Wandale Robinson, Tucker Kraft, to name a few. Well, in today's video, we are trying to do just that, beat the breakout. I've got over 30 names, all right? If you're in a smaller league or a larger league, there's something for everyone here. And I also have some trade targets at the end of the video. Let's start with smaller formats. If you're in an 8-team or a 10-team league, these are guys that should already be rostered in 12 and 14 team leagues. But if they're available, definitely go pick them up. All right, a lot of running backs on this list: Nick Chubb, Jonathan Brooks, Tyrone Tracy, Bucky Irving, Rico Dowdle, Alexander Madison, Tank Bigsby, Kareem Hunt, who we talked about stashing not too long ago. Now he's a must start every week. At the wide receiver position, Slick Ricky Pearsall was one of our favorite pickups off the waiver wire. Definitely must roster name after Ayuk went down. And as far as Jacoby Myers, he was dropped in over 18,000 leagues yesterday. If he's available, he should definitely be rostered. He's a wide receiver one for this team moving forward. How about Josh Downs? Josh Downs was dropped in 48,000 leagues. I would still roster him personally because I do think there is a threshold at some point where they might need to start Joe Flacco if they keep winning games. And then Jalen Tolbert was dropped in 28,000 leagues. He's still the wide receiver two in an offense that I believe is going to need to throw the ball a lot more moving forward. And lastly, Juju Smith-Schuster, who, by the way, very clearly they missed Juju last week versus San Francisco 49ers. I mean, they definitely need him back into that lineup. So I still think he should be stashed. All right, we're going to split this up into positions, and then I'll do my top 10 at the end. Let's start with the wide receiver position. Full transparency, I'm more excited to talk about wide receivers on today's stash video than I am any other position, but you can check out the time codes if you're looking for running backs specifically. Number one favorite stash in fantasy football this week for me is Jalen McMillan. This was my favorite player in the entire 2024 NFL draft. He wasn't my highest ranked player, right? Hear what I'm saying. But from scouting the class, from watching film, from reviewing analytics multiple times on our Dynasty channel, I said he would be the steal of the draft. All right, y'all know the deal. My favorite player in this entire draft, that is Washington wide receiver Jalen McMillan. Jalen McW's.
Oh boy.
Now here's the deal. Chris Godwin is out for the year with a fractured ankle. It was bad. It was like a Dak Prescott type of ankle fracture, which makes me incredibly sad because I had him in the flock league, but it gives my favorite rookie a chance to step up in a great offense. And here's what Jalen McMillan has going for him. Number one, he was drafted day 2 in a stacked wide receiver class. He was round 3 pick 29. And if you look at historical hit rates over the past decade, round 3 and round 2 wide receivers hit rates are very similar. So the value between those two rounds, typically you're getting a similar valued player in a later round. And we're talking about a guy who was always producing at Washington when he was healthy. Alongside the names Rome Odunze, alongside the names Jalen Polk, he was always producing. In fact, in 2022, he was outproducing Rome Odunze in his last full healthy season at Washington. My favorite pro comps for him, I thought at the best ceiling outcome, he could be a Keenan Allen type player. His middle ground, I thought, was a Christian Kirk type player. And his floor, I thought, was this version of Tyler Boyd we have today. So I think he's a great player. He joins a team that's currently top 10 in passing attempts per game, a very good offense. I think he can become a legit flexible option week in, week out. Think about Wandale Robinson, what he's given a lot of fantasy teams, but higher upside, more touchdown upside. I'm such a fan of his. I cannot overstate how excited I am to pick him up. All right. Second player, another player we loved in this class was Troy Franklin. In the last 2 weeks, Troy Franklin has career highs in route participation at 68 and 67% in the last 2 weeks. He also has had career highs in end zone target share. And just last week in week 7 on Thursday Night Football, he had a career high 25% target share for this team. And he's turning these opportunities into fantasy points. In week 6, first touchdown, 11.6 fantasy points. In week 7, in a blowout game, he had 6 targets on 50% of the snaps and turned that into 50 receiving yards. A player that I loved coming out of Oregon, has inbuilt chemistry with Bo Nix, was 3rd in receiving touchdowns last year in college football with Bo as his quarterback. He had the same amount of receiving touchdowns as Marvin Harrison, as Malik Neighbors in college football last year. He had 23 receiving touchdowns in his last 2 years at Oregon with Bo as his quarterback. And we've heard Sean Payton say he's finally coming into his own. I think his role will only grow over the course of the season. He's a must roster player. All right, at number 3, let's talk about Cedric Tillman. No Amari Cooper, Jameis Winston is starting moving forward, and last week, Cedric Tillman led all wide receivers in targets with 11 and in target share with 24% of the targets. He was second amongst wide receivers in snaps and in routes run, and he is just a very talented player coming out of Tennessee. He played with Hendon Hooker back, with the Tennessee Vols, and if Jameis Winston is starting moving forward, there could be serious fantasy gold for Cedric Tillman. We do not have to worry about Deshaun Watson. This team is going to be bad. They're going to be down in a lot of games, and we could see 6, 7, 8 targets per game for a guy like Cedric Tillman, who is finally coming into his own. All right, the fourth wide receiver I'm excited to stash this week, Rashad Bateman. Honestly, it's time to take Rashad Bateman seriously, guys. He's available in over 75% of leagues everywhere. Firstly, Zay Flowers, his ankle got rolled up on Monday Night Football. It's something we'll have to monitor throughout the week. But low-key, Rashad Bateman is having a great bounce-back campaign. This might shock you, but Bateman is the wide receiver 26 this year. He has a touchdown in 3 out of the last 5 weeks. He's averaging 12.8 PPR points per game in the last 5 weeks. He's really picking it up. He's been a flexible option, even with Zay Flowers healthy. And he's always been a great route runner coming out of Minnesota. Now he's finally staying healthy and showing what he can do. I think that he could be a flexible name moving forward. At number 5, Trey Palmer. If you miss out on Jalen McMillan in this cycle, which I would encourage you not to do, but if you do, go ahead and pick up Trey Palmer for free. This is a second-year player who produced pretty decently as a rookie in the wide receiver 3 role. He had almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns as a rookie. And again, no Chris Godwin rest of season. Mike Evans is going to be out an extended period of time with his hamstring injury. Why not pick him up? At number 6, Jacob Coing. Jacob Coing is available everywhere. If you miss out on slick Ricky Pearsall, try getting Jacob Coing for free. He put up some incredible numbers at Arizona. In his last 2 years at Arizona, over 7 touchdowns each year, over 800 yards each year. His career, over 4,400 receiving yards and 33 touchdowns. And he stepped in on Sunday and had some nice play for the 49ers. 2 catches for 50 yards on just 19% of the snaps. When I scouted Jacob Coing, I saw a Hunter Renfrow type of player, or at worst, Braxton Berrios. All right, we're going to move on to the running back position now. And I'll be honest, the running back position is a little bleak, but we can see some real needles in the haystack here. Number 1, Jaylen Warren. In most leagues, Jaylen Warren will be rostered, but in case he is out there in smaller formats, you have got to get him on your roster. Last week, he finally recovered the same role that he had in 2023. So, for example, last week, he played 50% of the snaps. That's what we were used to seeing from him in 2023, right? He had 34% of the rushing attempts, 61% route participation, and he had a 12% target share. That is pretty much what we expected from him this year. He's just been unhealthy. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. And don't forget, in 2023, last year, Jaylen Warren finished as the RB22 in fantasy football. He was ahead of Najee Harris, averaging 11.6 points per game, and the Steelers offense just scored 37 points with Russell Wilson, which is higher than their average through the first 6 weeks. If the offense is going to be better and Russ is going to be leading the way, then why not pick up Jaylen Warren? And also, Russ is not going to scramble out of bad plays like Justin Fields will. He'll probably dump it off to his running backs a bit more. All right, second running back I want to roster right now in a stash video is Marshawn Lloyd. Uber talented player, day 2 draft capital, is eligible to come off the IR last week. They're being very cautious with him. Plenty of NFL scouts that I really trusted, like Daniel Jeremiah, compared him to DeAndre Swift before the NFL draft. And we have seen, guys, I know I sound like a broken record on some of these names, but we have seen the Packers totally willing to split a backfield. I would not be surprised if Marshawn Lloyd comes back and pops in his return, and it's a name that we're talking about on the waiver wires. At number 3, let's talk about Audric Estime. Now, I will give Javonte Williams his flowers because he's looked very good in the last couple weeks. I can't deny that. And I know I sound like a broken record, but in the 3 games that Estime has played, he's looked so good on his limited touches. Now, he did fumble last week, which was very unfortunate. But again, he's played in 3 games this year. In those games, on limited touches, I'll give it to you, okay? Average 7 yards per carry, 6.5 yards per carry, and 5.8 yards per carry. He's looked so good every time he's had an opportunity. And we have seen Sean Payton deploy multiple running backs in an offense a bunch, right? Think all the way back to the Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara days. This could be his next Mark Ingram. I still want to roster him. I'm still holding him if you have the free space. The last running back And we'll have more in the honorable mentions, by the way, if you are looking for running backs. But the last one I think that should be rostered is Keaton Mitchell. This take is specifically for people who have a free IR spot. If you don't have an IR spot, you're not going to pick up Keaton Mitchell. But if you love Devon Achane, then you should definitely love Keaton Mitchell, because last year in 2023, Keaton Mitchell was even more explosive, even more dynamic than Devon Achane was. If you look at running backs in 2023 who had at least 25 carries, he was first in yards per carry, he was second in explosive run rate, second in missed tackles forced per attempt, and first in yards after contact per attempt. The dude is lightning in a bottle. Literally, he's lightning in a bottle. And yes, Justice Hill has been good, but I think Keaton Mitchell gives you something that Justice Hill just can't. He's got burners for days. He would be the fastest player on that team the day he's back, and that includes Zay Flowers. He's that quick. All right, do you need a quarterback in a one quarterback format? Let's talk about you guys first, one quarterback leagues. Bo Nix. Bo Nix is going way too far under the radar, in my opinion. If you look at Bo Nix, he's a quarterback 14 on the season as a rookie, by the way. Really impressive. And he has improved throughout the season. In weeks 1 to 2 versus weeks 3 to 7, you can see huge improvements, right? In weeks 1 to 2, averaging 0.5 touchdowns per game, now up to 1.5. He was averaging 2 turnovers per game in that span. Now he's barely turning the ball over, only 0.1 turnovers per game. His fantasy points per game went up from 11.7 to 17, and he is top 4 in rushing amongst quarterbacks, right behind Kyler Murray, averaging over 36 rushing yards per game, which gives you such a safe cushion for a mobile quarterback. I definitely think you should stash him, especially if, for example, you had Baker Mayfield and you just lost Chris Godwin. All right. Now, if you're in a super flex format, you should be stashing and rostering Jameis Winston. He was just labeled the starter for this team. We've seen him be a very good fantasy quarterback. He's willing to sling the ball all over the field. One of those classic backups who just elevates the wide receivers, like a Joe Flacco, right? So he definitely should be rostered in super flex formats. All right, moving on to the tight end position. I got 3 names for you: Cade Otton, Jatavion Sanders, and Noah Fant. Starting with Cade Otton, this team just lost its best pass catcher, and Cade Otton stepped up in a huge way. He had 10 targets in week 7, 100 yards, 18 PPR points. Definitely my favorite pickup. The second tight end we'll talk about is Jatavion Sanders, who was on the stash video last week. Did you stash him last week? All right. I mean, we were onto something, right? And he's only gotten more attractive to me, honestly. His route participation was a career high in week 7, 77%. It was going up every single week. His targets per route run, a career high at 35%. His target share, guys, a tight end who's a rookie just got 35% of the target share from his team in week 7. He had 51% of the air yards, and he has turned those opportunities every week into career high fantasy points, from 3.6 to 4.3, from 9.9 to 12.1 in week 7, 61 receiving yards on 6 receptions, career highs, improved utilization. Why would you not pick up a name like Jatavion Sanders? Come on. And then Noah Fant, an offense that throws the ball a ton, will be without DK Metcalf probably for multiple weeks. I think he's a fine, flexible play. All right. So I recently started separating these stashes into positions, and people asked me to give my top 10. So here's my top 10. Here's a list of it. You can stop, you can pause, and you can see. But these are my top 10 players if I were to have a top 10 list. You can see McMillan up at the top, as well as Cade Otton. There's just a lot of opportunities ahead of these guys with the injuries to the Bucks. All right, let's move on to honorable mentions. This is for deeper formats. If you're in a 12 to 16 team league, then these are some names you could consider. Dontavion Wicks, the Baba Yaga himself. You know I love him. He unfortunately didn't step up when we wanted him to, but he's a good player. Jordan Whittington. If they trade Cooper Kupp, Jordan Whittington will be the best stash in this entire video. I promise you. Okay, he should be higher. So definitely make sure he's rostered. Kendre Miller's developing a role. You can see last week, he actually had 6 yards per carry versus the Denver Broncos, which was impressive to see. Obviously, Alvin Kamara signs a long-term deal, but he should still be rostered. Names like Tim Patrick, if Jameson Williams is going to miss time. Names like Noah Brown, if Jaden Daniels comes back. Names like Tyler Goodson, if Jonathan Taylor misses time. He is the starting running back for that team. And then Jonnu Smith in deeper formats. All right. Do you need to stash a defense for week 9? Here are 4 defenses that I really like. The Chargers at the Browns, who give up the most points to opposing defenses in fantasy. the Titans versus the Patriots, rather, who are top 3 in points allowed, the Bengals versus the Raiders, who are top 5, and the Commanders at the Giants, who are top 7 in points allowed. And I will finish off here, very quick Twitter version of my favorite trade fours in fantasy football. Number 1, Sam Laporta. Jameis Williams is going to be suspended 2 games. I think we could see a higher target share for Sam Laporta. Every Dolphin, we've literally told you to trade for every Dolphin for like 5 weeks in a row now. And now it's going to pay off because Tua Tags is back into that lineup. Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. If you are a team that has a positive record, 4-3, 5-2, 6-1, 7-0, you should definitely be trading for a CMC, a Deebo, a Puka Nacua. These guys will definitely help you in your playoff push. You want to be the best version of your team in the playoffs, and all those guys help you do that. And then Hawkinson, in the span of tight ends right now, he's a great pickup. And then Chris Olave, by the way, with no Rashid Shaheed, he's going to drown in targets over there in New Orleans when Derek Carr is back. I appreciate you guys for watching the video. Do me a favor. Smash that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content. I'll be honest, like, you know, I don't want to be too high on myself. You know, I want to remain humble, but I feel like this is the best weekly video in fantasy football. I mean, I could be biased. Let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I feel like I offer so much value in this. All I ask in return is hit that like button, show some love by hitting that subscribe button. And the last thing I'll say is if you don't have a free account on Flock Fantasy just yet, go get one. It's free. Free 95. All you have to do is sign up with the promo code LAND at sign up, and you'll get access to expert consensus rankings, the My Team Analyzer, the trade calculator, all for free. And the last thing I'll say is if you want to ask me a question at any time, check out the pinned comment. There's a link where you can get a hold of me at any moment. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching the video. Let's get better in week 8. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.